Hello everyone, Ben Woodruff here with another Falconry video. Thanks for joining me today. This video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be actually kind of a little bit of a field trip, take you along with. It will be scouting Sharp-shinned hawk nests. And I'm doing this a little early this year. So when you're looking at birds, we look in field guides, and of course, a species that covers many states in the United States regionally might have different habits. Even in my own state, for example, the raptors that live in southern Utah typically nest much earlier, by a couple of months, than the same species in northern Utah. So that's good to know. But that aside, normally there are kind of specific seasons that we expect. So normally, for example, sharp-shinned hawks in northern Utah, I'm looking July and, fledging in end of July or August. So, but those rules get broken, especially when you're looking at outside factors. This isn't just with accipiters. This year, I've been watching a lot of other falcons. I've seen several prairie falcon nests that started later than normal and whose young were predated by ravens, where ravens came in and mobbed the parents and killed the young babies. So I even saw a prairie falcon nest the other day where the parents were still hanging around the nest, but the nest itself, they had totally given it up on. It's been very much a drought in my area for a number of years now, and you see that a lot of times where predators will switch their behaviors. Golden eagles normally hunt jackrabbits, but in the absence of jackrabbits due to disease or overhunting or whatever, they often will switch to things like sage grouse. So you have those kind of things. We had one of my friends was checking on a peregrine falcon nest that he checked several times, lots of activity, things were going great. Same thing, ravens came in, and they had this outside factor, and now they're gone. And so it's really sad that sometimes, but that's nature. There's these cycles, these ebbs, these flows. With accipiters, the true hawks, the forest hawks, we have three, of course, in the United States. The first one is the goshawk, the northern goshawk, which is, of course, the largest member of this group of the accipiters. The one in the middle is the Cooper's hawk, an incredibly ridiculously prolific and successful species. And then the smallest that I'm going to be looking for today is the sharp-shinned hawk. Now, all of these are fairly common, but as far as the outside resources, I like to think of goshawk, Cooper's hawk, sharp-shinned hawk as sort of like wolf, coyote, fox. Wolves, very successful alpha predators. Ooh, amazing. They're really powerful. But if their way of hunting goes away, things don't work. And that's the same thing with goshawks. At least, well, in playa lake system states, particularly Utah and Nevada, a little bit in Arizona too, but Utah and Nevada, so much of their ability to breed is based off of whether or not there are high alpine ground squirrels, like Uinta ground squirrels and stuff, what people usually call potguts. Those are the things they're looking for. And in that absence, a lot of times they just won't breed because it's like, well, there's barely enough food for me to hunt and my mate to hunt and find food. You know what? A plague has swept through the ground squirrels. We don't have that bumper crop of ground squirrels. No reason to try to start a family. And the opposite is true as well. I've been to goshawk nests where there is a population explosion of ground squirrels, and they'll have 5 young instead of 2 or 3, and the nest is overflowing with dead ground squirrels that they're bringing and underneath. Now, that's kind of like a wolf. It's kind of do or die. It's got to be the right way or not at all. A lone wolf can handle, but you don't see a pack or a family surviving in the absence of the game that they need. Coyotes, like a Cooper's hawk, are kind of right in the middle. They're like, hey, the world's changing around me. I'll change too. Super adaptable. You're going to have neighborhoods. Sure, I'll nest in a neighborhood. I'll nest in somebody's backyard. I don't care. I can be sneaky. I can be elusive. I'll go hunt bird feeders, whatever. And so even in strained years, like a nest that I highlighted last year in one of my videos last summer had 7 babies, which normally they lay 4 eggs, 3 of them hatch, 7 babies. So Cooper's hawks, it's not hard to find them. Sharp-shinned hawks are an incredibly common species, but they're less adaptable. They pretty much only hunt small songbirds. Sharp-shinned hawks have feet that are The talons are very long, but the toes for their size are not all that long. They're very delicate, diminutive, powerful for their size, but diminutive birds. And so they just don't have the power to overtake and overpower larger prey. And so they don't seem to diversify out like a Cooper's hawk or even a goshawk are willing to do. The Cooper's hawk nest I mentioned last year that had 7 young, that nest, they routinely hunt at the bottom of this little canyon chipmunks. Just, you never hear about that, but it's one of their primary food sources in this particular canyon. You don't see that with Sharpies. Sharp-shinned hawks, you got to have a healthy population of little birds. And in order to have that healthy population of little birds in alpine country where they like to be, you need to have tiny, delicate spring runoff streams, and you need to have tiny insects everywhere for the little birds to eat, or seeds if they're seed eaters, and you need to have that base of the ecosystem. There are concerns lately that a lot of the pesticides being used privately and by the government are having impacts on the songbird population, and that's going through the less adaptable species like a sharp-shin. And that could very well be true. In addition to that, in my area, we year-round are still seeing sharp-shins, adult sharp-shin hawks flying through, but it's been harder the past 6-7 years to find a nest. And part of that, I believe, is because of the drought conditions, even in the mountains. So I normally, again, it's the beginning of June now. Normally, I don't start scouting sharp-shin nests until I'd expect to see some activity, like in July. But everything's been out of whack. I've seen raptorial species and non-raptorial species nesting ridiculously early, ridiculously late this year, and everything seems a little out of whack, out of balance. There's plants that were blooming in February that shouldn't have. We really didn't even have a winter. It was cold, but we didn't really have snow. We don't have much of a spring runoff at all. So I want to get started early. I have several friends that are hoping to pull sharp-shin hawks this year, and so I want to take you along. We might see goshawks, we might see sharp-shin hawks, we might see nothing, but I want to show you kind of what I look for when I'm going into areas that traditionally have had sharp-shin hawk nests. So hope you enjoy this. It's a different kind of video, but I'm going to bring you along and see the signs that we're looking for, and hopefully maybe see some sharp-shinned hawks in the process.
Okay, so we're parked up here, the right elevation. We're kind of parked out here by the willows, and we're close to a lot of human habitation, which is actually a potentially good thing when you're looking for sharpies. Water is so crucial to how they live. So we're going to go ahead and cross and get in to the right type of forest. Now this is one of our first clues of what we're kind of looking for. These are little runoff streams that are going to be gone within a matter of a few weeks to a month and a half. These are usually what they like to nest by. So I'm going to get up, start following a few of these up higher into the trees. You look behind me, all this undergrowth, it's kind of dense. We probably want to get up on the hill a little bit denser, but we're still by the main river. But this is dense enough right here to be decent for a Cooper's or a Sharpie. It's looking a little bit on the dense side for a goshawk, but not too much. But all of this, all of these early spring plants are going to grow much denser. These willows, choke cherries, all of this over here. Next few weeks, it's just going to explode, because when you're in high alpine country, once it gets warm enough, the plants, boom, they have to compete and grow and fight for sunlight as quick as they can. All right, little robin here. This is good, and I can hear a lot of birds. This is what we want. Now, this is a fairly open clearing where people pass through. We're close to some campgrounds. But if you look up the hill, this dense country up there is where they're probably going to nest. But they come into these semi-open clearings to hunt birds, just like this robin and other small songbirds. And I'm looking, and I noticed just right over here, we have one of these little mini creeks. So I'm going to start following this up, see what I can find. Here we've got some fairly fresh moose tracks. So they just came through here. It's one of the things, it's very easy when you're in the forest, when you're focusing on the trees, to not look at what's in front of you. So very important, make sure you don't run into a moose.
When I'm up here, I'm always looking to try to get a sense of what the prey base is, what kind of animals are around here, both predator and prey. And you kind of get that right here. There's these big old piles of what were originally fir cones, spruce cones, and pine tree cones. They were stored in here by a squirrel. And then this giant mound here over the winter is where he dug them up and ate them. But there is also something kind of interesting here. This is part of the keel. It's very hard to tell. This is part of the keel of a grouse. So it's very strange. It's hard to see. But the keel bone is like the what all the muscle, the chest muscle, the flight muscles anchor to on a bird. So this is a grouse. So these are both species, both squirrels and grouse, that are something that goshawks and potentially Cooper's hawks would be in. So because of that, I know this could be an area that would have goshawks. And if that's the case, then you got to wonder, are they afraid for goshawks? So what that tells me right now is I don't want to look right in this area. It's a little too open, because if a sharp-shinned hawk is hunting or nesting right here, goshawks or Cooper's hawks are going to pick them off easily. So I want to go up the hill a little further, where it's a little denser, where they can hopefully nest safely away from the eyesight of a goshawk. There's some more moose tracks right here. Stepped in here, and he continued on that way. So I think we won't go that way. Came in here and I'm crossing a campground. It's really sad to see all the things people are leaving out. Trash, toilet paper, sunglasses, and you know, packets of condiments and stuff. So it's kind of sad that that's the way people are. It's not good. But the nice thing about campgrounds is that people leaving out trash and stuff also brings in a lot of the prey species, like ground squirrels and little songbirds eat little scraps that people leave. Again, it's not a good thing, it's out of the natural order, but it does work. So if you're just trying to find accipiter nests, if you're up in the mountains near people, near cabins, near campgrounds, you often find them. So I'm gonna try a couple things here. I'm gonna use a call tape, and well, I'm gonna use my phone and a Bluetooth speaker and just do some sharp-shinned hawk calls and also some goshawk calls that have worked really well for me. But also, I brought my tried and true, this, believe it or not, dead serious, this little squeaky toy monkey. I found more sharp-shinned hawk nests just by doing that call. So we'll be trying both of these methods. Even though it's greening up, and there's a lot of plants starting to have their leaves, when I'm looking down below, then we're seeing a whole lot of all the plants have been matted down under the snow. They're barely starting to come out, and you can see these leaves are covered with just like white decomposed plant material. There's been fungi all work under winter decomposing what was under the snow, and it leaves kind of a bit of a film or a dust over the top of these plants. So to me, that tells me that spring hasn't fully arrived here. And so as I keep going up this hill, I'm going to find more and more patches like that. But again, my whole point in scouting this early is because all the other nesting behavior I've seen in all other raptors this year has been very out of whack and out of season. So I'm trying to get an early start and assess the health of the forest and see if we just might find Sharpies starting to nest up this early. There's a lot of trees that have been dying from diseases, and the Forest Service has come in and been cutting them down because they pose a potential danger. But it's interesting to see how you have different species of fungus that are just eating the dead tree at every level, above ground, underground. This is starting to break down the tree, and eventually we'll turn it back into soil. Now, while I'm out here in the forest, sharp-shinned hawks are elusive enough and secretive enough, again in this area, particularly because of their fear of goshawks and Cooper's hawks seeing them. They usually like things pretty dense. I'm not actually looking for a nest. I'm looking for a reaction. I'm looking for signs of kills, signs of prey trade-off. I'm looking for their response of aggression towards me if I'm near the nest. Now, one of the things behind me, we locally call this witch's broom. This is not a nest, and it's easy to throw you off. That one's pretty obvious. But you see something like that in a tree from a distance, especially if it's higher up, you might like, oh, I found a nest. That's really common here. It's just infectious growth. It's
things that are not going healthy with that tree. But I'm in mostly spruce and fir forest. And these, let me just show you. These are small, but not too small for Sharpie. This is what we're looking for. Fir trees is what they're mostly gonna like to be in, instead of some of those denser spruces. And that's locally. And again, anytime you say a rule, birds are gonna break it. Whatever rule you make, there's always an exception. Keeping an eye out on looking to establish my prey base here so that I can better know my approach. And again, especially here in Utah, if there is a lot of prey to feed a goshawk, there's probably goshawks. And if there's goshawks, then I probably need to check on steeper hills and denser hills. But just found something more here. Let's take a look down here. Just found some hair, some fur. This appears to be rabbit, and it's very soft. It looks very much like snowshoe hair. It was kind of stuck on this tree right here. Probably a rabbit came running through, and it might have been all the way in the winter, most likely. But the fact that this is present tells me, again, we're looking at good goshawk country, and therefore, rather than, I've been in these kind of more open areas, but I need to get denser up on that hill. All right, found a good sign that we might be in some good country, but I don't know how good. So let's take a look up here, and I found an old nest. Based off the thickness of the sticks, that looks Sharpie. It could be Cooper's, but they really look too thin. Definitely not a goshawk. They're extremely twiggy. So if there is an old Sharp-shinned hawk nest, then this is a grove that was likely used before. The problem is that tree is very dead, and I've never known a Sharp-shin to nest in a dead tree. Up towards the top there is some live growth, so it's probable that it got attacked by bark beetles and died in the past 2 or 3 years, but and isn't fully dead because the crown still has some life. But to me, that tells me we're in the right area, but I just hope that it's not too dry of a year to not support a Sharp-shin. I'm still getting patches of snow in the shady areas, and as you can see, the understory, now that I'm on the hill in good Sharpie country, is very sparse. A lot of these bushes and shrubs haven't even started leafing out yet, or maybe they only have in the past 6 or 7 days. So I'm going to keep trying, and I'm going to start using the goshawk call and see if that will cause them to come out. If you're using a goshawk call, if you're even remotely in the right area, they will often hear you and come diving after you because they think you're a goshawk or they want to chase you out of their territory. I've been up on the hill here for, maybe an hour, and I've been doing the goshawk call tape just out of the Bluetooth speaker, which is this. That's just the distress call, the angry call of a goshawk dive bombing. And if you're doing a call, whether you're any accipiter you're looking for, that you're doing a call tape, whether you're trying to just do the call, the hunger cries of a baby or the alarm call of an adult, don't just play it nonstop. It's good to intermix it. Sit, play it a few times, listen. Usually accipiters don't come charging in. They might respond, but they might fly closer. You don't hear them or see them. Fly closer from hundreds of yards away until finally they respond or you see them. So I've been playing, listening, haven't had any luck, but usually that does a good job. But what I've noticed is, just if you can just see how scraggly this looks, how many dead trees there are. The bark beetles are just decimating the fir trees and all the conifers around here. And there's also almost no humidity. This forest has so many springs and all this understory when it's off-gassing and full of life. It's just humid as can be through this forest, and there's none of that. There were lots of birds down below, down that hill, lots of prey species for them to hunt, but I haven't heard or seen a single songbird of any kind up here on this hill, which means one of two things or both. It could be I'm too early, which is quite likely, but it could also mean that things are just too strained from the drought and from these bark beetles, and perhaps they're not even going to nest in this particular region. But I'm going to keep looking around and keep trying out this call tape and see what I can find. Still no response yet to any of the call tapes. Remember, when you are looking in forests for accipiters,
one of the biggest things you have to do is just put the mileage on the ground. You just have to walk, search. Half of the nests I found, goshawks, Cooper's hawks, Sharp-shinned hawks, half of them I found by searching intentionally with the techniques that I always share and teach about, and the other half, it was just by putting the mileage on the ground and luck. You're never going to find a Sharp-shinned hawk nest or a goshawk nest while you're sitting at home watching the TV. But one of the things I look for also, I usually, when I'm using call tapes, I often, they don't, again, about half of them aren't really aggressive near the nest, Sharp-shins. It's weird, but they will be aggressive with their food trade-off. So this is not one, but this is what it would look like very often. It doesn't have to look exactly like this. But you see, you've got this aspen that's kind of broken and bowed over. I have never found a Sharp-shinned nest where the food trade-off perch was not above, between 25 to 100 yards uphill from the nest. So if you're walking through the forest and you see a bowed branch like that and underneath you find poop and plucked feathers, that is where the male Sharp-shin comes, calls to the female who leaves the nest, flies uphill, and they trade off the food there. Okay, so again, that's what I'm hoping to find more than anything, is not the nest itself, but one of these food trading platforms with evidence below, and then I'll just walk straight down the hill. That's what I'm looking for. Well, now I'm getting into an area, you can see this greenery behind me. This understory has really taken off. So this is an area that gets a lot more sunlight. The snow melted earlier, and it's clearly less dense, and we're getting into the aspens, which this is far more of what I would consider goshawk country locally. They love to eat the ground squirrels, and they love these kind of areas. So I'm going to keep running through with the call tape, see what I can find, and I'm going to get across to the other side of these aspens back into the dense stuff and see if I can track down any Sharpies. It's interesting being up here, just seeing how quickly something made by humans just ceases to exist. So behind me were just the remnants of an old prospector's cabin from, late 1800s, early 1900s. There's a lot of gold, silver, and iron ore prospectors up this canyon. And now there's also some pump equipment here. I'm gonna check this out. So, looks like some sort of water pump system, probably pumping out the water that was coming out of a mine. This whole ridge line I've seen all along the way, little areas where the Forest Service has tapped the water and tried to divert it underground, like underground water that should otherwise normally be bubbling to the surface. But that's what, to my eyes, this looks like is probably some sort of pump that was used for pumping water out so they could do their mining operations. But however and whatever way it was used, like, it's just sitting here in the forest rusting away now. I think what would it take to get this all the way up here in the mountains? And now, give it a few more 100 years and it'll just be rusty sediments turning back into the earth. And I also found something interesting, and let's see if you can see it up here. Found an old goshawk nest in a tree that's also dying. And again, gives everything to say that this territory is kind of strained right now. It is green, there is water right here by a creek, but everything is still strained. When we see these beautiful conifer forests with fir trees and pine trees and spruce trees, it's so beautiful, and all we can think of is like, oh, it's so full of life. But so much of this life is hard to digest for vertebrates, and that's why moose are our dominant browser in North America, and the moose can handle it. There's been moose tracks all around, but raptors have a more difficult time. Same thing, deer. Oh, you see deer in the forest, but where are they eating? They might sleep there, they might wander through there, but they want to go where there's grass that they can graze on, not trees to browse on. So you always have to just be kind of looking wherever there's water, wherever there's a river, a stream, a creek, especially for accipiters. It's like down here, this size and smaller is what I'm looking for.
If it's half this size of this beautiful little stream, that's what I'm looking for to find Cooper's hawks, sharp-shinned hawks, nesting in or right near a river like this.
Well, now I'm getting close to the camp, so I can hear gas generators and trailers and people partying, so I'm getting a little closer to civilization than I think I'm likely to find a sharp-shin. But this is a good pre-scouting trip, good to see where the land's at, good to see how much of the snow is melted. And again, I'm 2 to 3 weeks ahead of when I like to even start scouting, but where the weather's been so strange, thought I'd give it a try. And so try it again in a few more weeks, see what we can find. But I hope you enjoyed coming along and getting out in nature with me, looking at the signs of nature, trying to find sharp-shins and goshawks. And hope you join me next time. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, happy hawking.